Hello, I'm Lindley Gooden. Welcome to Marketforce's Excellence in Customer Experience webinar, hosted in association with Steria. Today's consumers can interact with you anywhere, at any time, in many ways. Their expectations are changing all the time, and any organisation hoping to respond will need a robust but flexible strategy that continually enhances their customers' experience. And although some sectors are arguably more competitive than others, many industries face the same challenges. So today, we're going to look at what excellence in the customer experience really means to three different organisations, to get a picture of the strategies that they've put in place and to give you a unique opportunity to compare and contrast and find out how yours could be improved. With us we have four experts representing a range of dynamic sectors. Let's meet them straight away. First of all, Peter Dean. Hello, Peter.
Hello.
Peter has worked at RBS for over 10 years, managing customer-centric change projects. His passion for customer experience management and collaboration with academic partners has led him to develop class-leading methodologies, providing truly actionable insight, assisting business leaders to shape future strategy. Good to see you, Peter.
Thank you.
Next is Sean Riseborough. Hello,
Yeah.
Sean.
How are you today?
Very good. How are you?
Yeah, good. Looking forward today.
Sean is Director of Customer Experience for Virgin Media. Sean leads Virgin Media's Net Promoter Programme and is responsible for driving this customer feedback into all parts of the business, transforming Virgin Media into a company that's continually led and informed by the voice of its customers. Good to see you too. Next is Morag. Hello, Morag.
Hi, hello.
Morag is Marketing Manager at Affinity Water and leads on voice of the customer projects. Morag has over 13 years marketing experience in financial services, publishing and utilities, and recently led Veolia Water's rebrand to Affinity Water. Good to see you too.
Hi.
And finally, last but not least, is Sean Tomlinson.
Hi, Lindley.
Sean runs private sector consulting for Steria. He's been a strong advocate of a customer-centric approach to service delivery for many years, applying these techniques in programs of work in banking, insurance, and with public sector clients. Within Steria, Sean also runs the Global Community for Customer Centricity. Thanks for joining us, and also to Steria for supporting today's webinar.
Thanks very much. Enjoy.
Couldn't do it without you. So, over the next hour, we'll be covering a lot of ground, and many of you will have your own questions and comments for us. So we want to give you the opportunity to put your questions to our four panellists today, if you're watching us live. Send in your questions throughout the webinar, either using the question section on the webpage you're watching right now, or the Twitter hashtag CustXP. That's CUSTXP, all in one. We'll try to answer as many of them as we can towards the end of the discussion. We'll also be conducting two short polls. The poll questions will appear on a slide on the right-hand side of your screen. So vote when you hear the poll, and we'll discuss the results very shortly afterwards. So let's kick off with exactly that. First thing is a question for you. Hopefully you can see the question on the right-hand side of your screen right now. It is, which of these sectors is seen as a leader in customer experience? Number one, financial services. Number two, retail. Number three, public sector. Number four, travel and leisure. And five, utilities, energy or water. Now there's five options there. Choose the one that you think personally is relevant to you or perhaps for your business. Let's get an idea of what's most important. Do vote now, and we'll look at the results with our panellists in just a few minutes' time. But let's get started with the discussion. RBS has 24 million customers. Virgin Media has 10 million. And Affinity serves 3.5 million households. So three very different customer bases, but I'd like to start by getting the panel's thoughts on how they feel customer behaviour is changing. First of all, Sean Tomlinson, get us started. How are the trends changing in terms of customer expectations, do you think?
So I think expectations is really the key word there. Different people have different views around what they expect from they are. I think with the media scenarios, the end goal is what's count. It's the product, what you see. Yeah. Within a banking environment, actually the end goal for the customer is serviced by getting there, and it's not actually delivered at the end goal. So the expectations are really different of what they're trying to achieve, and the expectation is different depending on the channels that you're going through. Some people hate going through contact centres. Their expectations of service are really low, and when they're delighted they're absolutely blown away, sometimes just by someone being nice to them.
So it sort of transforms slightly from what we want or what we need to what we expect. Are we that badly served that we need to expect so much, or is it just that we are more discerning? Perhaps
I think expectation is actually what drives change. I mean, 10 years ago you wouldn't have seen a director of customer experience, and that customers, I don't think, will ever get to the point where they're absolutely completely satisfied, and we shouldn't expect them to either. You know, but there is a real ratchet on change. I think over the last few years, organisations are recognising that they can no longer just compete on price; they have to compete on service, and so they're putting effort into that. They're making it work, and they're realising the damage that not having great service can provide. And what that's doing is just ratcheting things up. And the thing is, as soon as you ratchet it up, you can't go back down again.
It's difficult, isn't it?
Yeah.
Peter, in financial services, you've got a fairly unique, it's a wide industry, but fairly unique set of problems, and perception is part of it. How do you get that sort of how do you see those trends developing? How do you improve customer experience in basic terms?
So I think for us, it's about understanding that there is an outcome and an experience for every interaction, and making sure that they are both positive. We can provide the best experience in the world, but if we don't get what the customer is asking us to do right, then that experience is actually pointless. So getting that balance, making sure that we deliver on both to the standard the customer expects.
We'll talk about experience and how you measure that. Obviously, that's really important. You can't
Absolutely.
do much about it unless you know exactly what people are saying about you. But is feedback very important to that? Is measuring and then talking to people? I mean, really trying to get inside people's personal wishes.
Right, absolutely. You don't know what you don't know, and it's critical that when you're designing services, looking how you improve those services, that you involve the customer in those conversations. It's very easy to sit in our big glass offices designing services, designing products, thinking we know what the customer wants, and we're probably about 95% right most of the time because we're customers ourselves. But the last little bits that really make the difference, you absolutely have to get from the customer, because they're the people who are using the product.
Morgan, to you, I guess in the water industry, in some ways, it's not something that you wouldn't expect customers to interact all the time, or would you? What are you doing to try to get across that customer expectation and react to it, give us something we want?
Yeah, I mean, particularly on the operational side, we'll find that customers will contact us when they're going through something normally quite distressing. So maybe there's been a burst in the area, or the water's not, coming through the taps. That's something that really affects people, and their everyday lives. The water is something they expect to just be there. So when that fails, there's, quite a lot of distress, and they may call us if they haven't been able to see about the alerts about a burst on our website or through Twitter, but they'll call us in some distress sometimes. So we have an opportunity there to really meet them emotionally and turn that situation around and keep them informed with what's happening. But yes, it's one of those things where we actually don't want customers to call us. We're a bit strange like that in the water industry.
I'm assuming you're not, obviously.
No, but it's those situations where, as you say, it's about expectation. People come to a call centre experience, and particularly with water, I think they tend to have lower expectations. So when we see comments from our customer feedback which says, I was really surprised with the service, really delighted, gosh, you're the best of the utility companies I've spoken to when I've been moving home, it really does warm the heart, so to speak.
Yeah, look, let's face it, every industry, that's why we're here today, every industry has its own set of unique demands, the type of customer, what they want and how much they want to interact. But from Virgin Media's point of view, a name that we'll know, look, you're in a very competitive industry, and we'd, I guess, imagine that you have to forge ahead and really make it work.
Yeah, I mean, expectations is quite an interesting word, and we ask a different question: is what do customers value? So and there's a great advantages these days, and it's easy to keep listen to customers and identify what they value. And in our industry, that's really kind of critical. And we're also very lucky because it's a monthly subscription business. So if you talk to me today, I can actually see what you do tomorrow. I can see if you ring us more and cost to serve, stay longer, spend more, tell your friends. So if we can get to the heart of what you truly value, and if we deliver against what you value, you change your behaviour around those 4 loyalty drivers. So it's an interesting word, want, what the customers expect. For us, we ask the question, what do customers value?
And I assume, in this case, perhaps that constant interaction, I wouldn't have imagined that you'd have that constant interaction in water, for example. But you're saying you do. You actually have regular contact with your customers.
Yeah, well, it depends on how they contact us. Ideally, our ideal customer never calls us, pays by direct debit,
Yes,
it just carries on.
Yeah.
But when we do have the interaction, we are able to understand how happy they are, because we text them after their call centre experience, or if one in the community. So we have got a really wide, broad view of every single process and every experience they have with us, so we can understand where we're succeeding, where we're failing, and direct strategy accordingly.
Is that enough, or do you need to really produce a great response, a personal response?
Yeah, well, I think so we are a very high volume transactional business. We talk to our customers tens and tens of millions of times per year.
But can you personalise that?
And well, for every single customer interaction, it's a personal experience. Organisations start to talk about, can we personalise the experience? The reality is, for you as a customer, that is an experience of one. So you have to make every touch matter, and by giving your employees the right tools, the right guidance, the right incentives, then yes, they can make that a really great interaction for that individual customer.
That feedback is really interesting, isn't it? You're saying you're getting that feedback and then you're able to act on it immediately. And quite a lot of organisations find it very hard to react quickly to getting that type of response now, because they say, oh, our systems are too slow, or our organisation's not able to move.
Would you also believe perhaps that you have to do everything, you have to compete with everybody in the marketplace? Is it more important to just do what you do really well and take care of the basics solidly at all times? What do you think, Peter?
I think it depends what you're trying to do as a company. If you look at financial services, I think it's widely recognised we're, as an industry, very bad, but we have companies who are better than others within banking. For banks, it's probably saying we shouldn't really looking to be ranking ourselves against other banks because we provide such poor service in general. We should be looking to other industries to benchmark ourselves against, other telecoms, Disney, the Apples of this world, to say we should be striving for that. We shouldn't be striving to be the best of a bad lot.
So briefly, before we do...
I'd agree with that as well, actually. I guess with the utilities, our belief is the perception is pretty poor. So why compare yourselves like for like? Look at best in class. That's why we run Net Promoter, so we can benchmark ourselves against best in class in customer service, because it's not unique to one industry.
Well, the poll results are in. I'll go to them in just one second, but before we do go there, as we're summing up this early section where we have so much to get through, but are there common drivers? Very briefly, is it delivering a lifestyle, and then I as a consumer use your service in whichever way I want to? Is it possible to deliver sort of an improved lifestyle? Is that where the emphasis should be these days for any organisation to their client, their customer, whether they're a consumer or perhaps another organisation?
Absolutely. I think for banking, it's realising, and the industry is slowly realising, that people don't come to you for a mortgage. They come to you because they want to buy a house. They don't come to you for a credit card. They come to you because they want an easy way to buy things and not pay for them immediately. And we are supporting a lifestyle. And if there was another way of supporting that lifestyle without using banks, I really believe at the moment people would probably use it.
And would that be the case with the other...
we talk about loving our customers, loving their digital life, and that's what it's about. But I just love the example of a bank that can start to talk about helping people move house rather than actually sell a mortgage. Because I think that's when an organisation is thinking like a customer, is being customer centric. It's a great example of an organisation that's focusing from the customer, actually.
Well, the poll results are in, so let's go to those straight away. The question was to you. Thank you very much for writing into us. That's fantastic. Which of these sectors is seen as a leader in customer experience? The first one was financial services, then retail, then public sector, then travel and leisure, then utilities, energy or water. The results are... Shall I go from bottom up or top to bottom, I think? Top to bottom? Right, top to bottom. Number 4 was travel and leisure. You think 45% of you think that's the industry where customer experience is put at the heart. Number 2, very close behind, was retail. That was 41%. So, the next, there was quite a big drop actually from there. It was our financial services, 12%. Now, 12%, number 3, actually, there was a nice little raised eyebrow there. That's interesting. We'll go straight to Peter after that. At the end, it was utilities, energy or water. Now, you've just hinted at that the perception possibly isn't there yet. Peter, first of all, financial services, number 3 position. What do you think about that?
I think, given the list that we were comparing against, I think it's surprising in a couple of respects. But I think it might be a recognition that in the last couple of years, financial services is doing a lot of effort to try and clean up its act and provide that better service. And certainly my role didn't exist 3 or 4 years ago, and the fact that we now have vast teams across almost every bank looking to improve the customer experience, I think is probably what's driving.
There's more scrutiny now, isn't there, as well? So people have investigated. Let's go to utilities. You know, we talked about your situation, but look, there is this perception. 3% of people thought you were top.
I'm not surprised.
Not you personally, by the way.
Yes.
Yes.
But in terms of, I think we're still suffering from the hangover of pre-privatisation. People still call us the water board. So there's this preconception, I do believe, that you know, we're stuck in the dark ages and there's no focus on the customer. We are a utility, and by virtue of that, we're just there to provide water, and that's it, full stop. So,
is it also because we have a very esteemed audience of people watching us live and on demand to this, and of course they're in industry, so I wonder whether perhaps it's a lack of awareness, perhaps, as well?
Possibly. But as we've said before, you tend to only contact your water company if there's a problem, or possibly to pay a bill or discuss your bill. So there's less opportunity for customers to contact you. It's not, we're not a company or an industry which you have frequent interaction, but we're really proud to say that when they do contact us, you know, our Net Promoter Scores are up in the 50s at the moment. So we do work very hard at delighting the customer, and we're regulated, and part of our duty as a regulated business is actually to provide great service, and we're judged as such by Ofwat.
We didn't have telecoms, and we have to move on, but we will ask you much more about telecoms as we go along, and the service, and also obviously Sean as well. Number 2 was travel and leisure. I enjoyed my last holiday. Okay, next section. Let's talk about the touch points. The number of touch points increasing. Every interaction with your customer matters, and the insight you can gather is fundamentally important. For the next few minutes, let's go talk about how to really listen to your customers, how those touch points can work, how to measure and prioritise their needs and expectations, and then crucially, how to drive improvements in the customer experience as a result. Firstly, how do you listen to what your customers are saying, either about you or to you? Let's go to Morgan first of all. Is it a case of, again, doing one thing really well, or being across every single channel? How can you fit your organisation's needs and the communication that comes in and goes out?
For me, it's vital that you capture as many voices of the customer as possible, and make sure that you're not just using one technology or one way of asking customers how happy they are. We collect voice of customer data from direct SMS feedback, from our Twitter feed, Facebook page, the complaints that we get in. You know, these are all ways that customers can tell you how happy or unhappy they are with the service they're receiving. And bringing those all together, it is a challenge, but it's really useful. And if you don't listen to the customer and act on what they're saying, there's no point in doing voice of the customer activity.
But it's obviously seen not as very easy, and Virgin Media, obviously, you're dealing with so many interactions.
Yeah, and so we actually use Net Promoter, and I think we might be coming on to that, but we started that 5 years ago. We've collected over 5 million bits of individual customer feedback since we launched, and we talked about, you know, 3,000 times today we'll find out what a customer thought about us yesterday. But actually, customer experience, as Marag said, it's just 2 very simple disciplines. You know, step 1's to listen to customers, and step 2 is to do something with the data. And actually, the organisations that are great around customer experience are fantastic at part 2. You know, so it's the operating discipline to hear what customers say about all your products and all your touch points, but then actually take action on it in a systematic way. And that's, you know, most organisations do step 1, but actually forget that the difference to customers is when you do something with the data.
Is it a case of prioritising, you know, and acting on certain ones first and certain ones second and so on, or is it just is it an attitude, a brand that needs to come across?
I think different organisations will find different types of measures and scores more important to them, and how they interact with their customers. And there's also the question of, when are you listening to your customers? Is it in the early stages of product development, or is it after you've already delivered a poor service and you finally start to act on it? I mean, we saw today in the papers with Microsoft, they've launched their new Xbox One. It's a premium product, and you know, they're getting slated in the press today because they listened to their customers and actually said, no, you can operate this Xbox One without being online all the time. You know, they hadn't heard that feedback previously. Now, whether they didn't ask or they just didn't listen is another question. But they've got to a point where they're at the stage where they're not saying, oh, it's backtracking, but at least they've listened. They've made a decision, and they've acted on it, and they seem to be acted on it.
And Peter, you lead the Voice of the Customer programme at RBS. again, in financial services, where it has been a very difficult time, what are you gleaning from that? Has that been a priority to go forward and listen more, perhaps?
I think it absolutely is now a priority, and I think the results for that poll are showing that. I think picking up on what Sean said about listening to your customers and then acting on it, one thing that we've realised over the last couple of years is when you're doing that design piece for how you listen, you need to design your research with improvement in mind. And there's far too many tracking studies and pieces of research we see that are what I would say interesting, but not useful. They tell you what the customer's feeling, but they don't tell you actually what's wrong. And so when you're building your research program, you absolutely have to just have in mind the end goal, which is we're going to need to do something with the results of this, guys. Let's make sure we build that in.
So how do you get those insights?
You need to find out the why and not just the what, don't you?
Yeah, and making those insights work is so important, and that's what seemed to be the difficult thing if you're not doing it already.
Yeah, but I think there is. I mean, the secrets of success on that secret. If you Google it, you'll find some very simple rules around what's the operating discipline to take customer feedback, to distribute it widely in your organisation, drive it in, take action. I think the other bit that maybe we should also make the point of is that every organisation that goes for a transformation of customer experience tends to go through 3 waves. So your measurement needs to reflect that. At the start, it's the operational wave. Stop doing dumb things for your customers. The second wave tends to be how do you stitch the organisation together end to end so these journeys work for customers and also tackle that product value for money area. And then the final wave is cultural. How do you actually get the customer right at the heart of what you do? So as well as the kind of the good things around the kind of measurement of interactions, etc., make certain your measurement journey actually follows the change journey that you're going to go through.
Well, very shortly we'll talk about internal buy-in, how you can get people end to end to really get involved with the customer and think about it in this way. But let's just drill down for a moment into an NPS. You will design your own NPS format depending on your business and so on. Let's just very briefly go through that with you.
Yeah, well actually we just stole it directly from the inventors of Net Promoter Sat Matrix. And
you won't be designing your own NPS.
we thought we'd actually spend the effort
working though.
Spend the effort on the important piece, which is actually doing some of the data. But we eventually end up now, as I say before, there's 5 million times we've collected the voice of the customer. We have market level NPS, so we can see how we're doing relative to the competition. Relationship level customer experience, so we can kind of see what a customer's value between the product, value for money, brand and service, so we know where we're taking the critical stuff.
And are these all key areas that you identified in advance, or they develop over time?
I think so. So evolved to that. The thing we launched with first, which is part of this change journey, is the operational. So 14 key touch points, every one of our 4 operational journeys and 2 relationship journeys. Because if you think about what makes a good customer experience metric, well, it needs to be simple, absolutely needs to be universal. You need to understand exactly what your customers value across all those kind of attributes. It needs to be personal to me. It needs to be actionable, which is about what delights and what kind of frustrates.
We've talked about this already. There are many customers coming to you today to ask those individual needs. But would you aim at certain particular areas, in terms of getting that customer feedback and then understanding it and acting upon it? Are there particular things that say in utilities need to be done?
Well, for us, we run Net Promoter Score also, and customers who contact our call centre will have an experience with a technician, finding their meter, fixing a leak, etc. They'll get asked the Net Promoter Score question within 24 hours of their experience. So we're able to get real-time feedback for every technician, every advisor, every process. So it's going back to what Peter was saying about when you construct your voice of customer programme, it is vital to have that ability to dig down later to understand, okay, so we've got these scores over here, these scores over here. What actually are the root causes, which particular process is really falling here and which ones are really succeeding, and taking that to develop further.
It comes with its own risks, doesn't it? If you ask for a reaction for a recommendation, for example, every time that you interact, that gets pretty tired after a while as well. You have to be careful. You have to know your customer enough to know how many times you've talked to them, how many times you've asked them, and so on and so forth, don't you?
I think NPS is sort of the winner in the VHS Betamax of customer experience scoring, and it's certainly there at the moment. And you absolutely wouldn't want to throw away all the history and what you've done, and you want to build and grow on that. But as an individual customer myself, if somebody asks me after I've had a poor experience, and particularly I think this is important in service industries, that would you recommend? It gets my back up. It actually has a damaging effect in and of its own right. They always say measurement can have an impact on what you're trying to measure in the first place. And I think that the question around customer effort, say particularly in service industry, can be really important. How hard was it for you to deal with us? And if you reduce that customer effort, you're reducing the friction between the organisation's goals and the customer's goals, and I think that's the real key to getting great customer experience.
Many industries here, but can I just ask any practical outcomes by getting that right, asking the right questions, looking at the right sectors of parts of your business?
I think it's staying away from specifics, obviously, but it's we've got some very, very good examples of where we've gone out, spoken to customers, listened to not only what services we deliver and how we perform against them, but what parts of our service are missing, what don't we do. We've then gone back, changed things, added new services, and re-emphasised services that people maybe didn't realise we do. And we've seen definite rises in market share and revenue off the back of those.
Well, there's an interesting, again, just phrase there. We go out and ask questions, and one of the things we like about Net Promoter is the unfiltered voice. It's actually about customers in an unstructured way giving you feedback, because what you can find is organisations can go out and ask questions about things that's important to them and then take actions on the back of it. And actually that will not improve the experience.
You mentioned earlier, it's very important to make it as easy as possible, right? So going out actually and facing up to somebody isn't the way forward. Perhaps it could be, in certain, if you're close with that customer, but are there any other ways that you can interact, any sort of the touch points that are good for things like NPS and asking direct questions to your customers?
Well, as I've said,
is it your Twitter, is it your Facebook?
Yeah, for me, we're spoilt now. There's so much customer feedback out there. You almost don't have to have an outbound SMS or website to gather feedback. We do that, but for smaller businesses who've got smaller budgets, they can just start by looking on Twitter, looking on Facebook. Customers are talking about your brand all the time, and never before have you been able to get hold of that. We're sitting in on conversations, not just in the UK but across the world. So it's really vital, I believe, for business to take hold of that and to bring that information into the business and act on it.
And can I say, you don't also need to ask questions sometimes, you can just go and meet customers. So we quite regularly bring customers in to meet the senior leadership team. We have programs called Close to the Customer. The goal of these programs is to get people to connect directly with customers and hear
but it's
directly.
Their choice, right? So they could step forward if they want to?
No, we have a program called Finding Your Focus. Every one of our leadership team actually has to go and spend a week doing a frontline job. So not a day, So for a day and a half, you can either go out and learn how to take calls, install, or sell. But it's that idea of really getting and that connection with customers and understanding what it's like for them to be a customer of yours.
I hear a documentary on the way. Briefly, we could spend longer on this, but we are talking about customer experience and how to deliver that today. But let's talk about ROI for a minute, because obviously I would imagine that the CFO, the chief exec is saying, okay, it's a bit expensive, it's a bit people-centric, it's a little bit too labour-intensive. Just briefly, if you don't mind, am I right, am I wrong?
Wrong. So customer experience absolutely pays, and there's 4 loyalty behaviours that we all know. So do customers who get a superior customer experience stay longer? Absolutely. Our customers who we give a good experience to their churn rate is 14 times better than those we give a bad experience for. It costs us more to bloody get it wrong because of failure around phone calls and truck rolls. We absolutely can see the relationship between great experiences and recommendation, and we can see the relationship between good experiences and customers taking more from us. But we are a monthly subscription business, so that's an easy part of this programme for us.
There's still a reluctance, isn't there, on behalf of wider organisations within, particularly, I think, the finance-based community, where it's easier to focus on efficiency than effectiveness and to take out cost. You can see the business case to that compared to something which, well, I'm not completely sure. And what we're starting to do now with organisations like yours is starting to recognise that value, that information's coming out, and people are starting to see that failure demand is the thing that really drives cost in organisations. Having to repeat and redo, it's just painful for everybody.
It's a brave new world. Listen, we must move on, I'm afraid, Morgan. We'll get back to you. We just heard obviously some interesting takes on how how to listen to your customers and implement better processes as a result. And now we'd like to hear from you again. It's time for our second live poll. The question should appear on the right-hand side of your screen right now. The question is, what is the biggest challenge when designing customer experience strategy? Is it getting buy-in? Is it the size of the customer base? Is it justifying your ROI? We've just cut more off in the flow there, but that's the next question. Or choosing the right tools and technologies. Please vote now, and we'll discuss the results with our panelists in just a few minutes' time. Well, while we're doing that, clearly all of this has a business-wide impact. So you'll need great communication across your organisation to empower staff and give them every reason to buy into your customer experience strategy. So firstly, how do you incentivise staff to keep the customer at the top of the agenda? Or is it just that you need a good process model in place? So how do you get people to really want to be part of your organisation? Possibly they're not very happy with their pay grade. Possibly it's a little bit long working hours. How do you get everyone involved?
So there's great process stuff you can do. There's great technology stuff you can do. But if the people aren't doing it, you don't have a business. Yeah. It's all about getting the people doing the right thing at the right time. And everybody in the organisation's got a role to play in that. And you know, some people don't recognise their internal customers. And those internal customers are not only customers of your business sometimes in their own right, but they're customers of services that you're providing. And I think that too often we don't apply the sorts of principles that we're starting to put into our external customers into the things that we do internally. I know, Sean, you were talking about running the internal NPS type scores. You know, great model. Lots of organisations run those surveys, making them actionable, being able to see the difference on the ground, and putting in place, yes, the processes, yes, the technologies that make things easier for people to do their jobs, but also recognising how that relates back to the end customer. If you're in HR, you're hiring people, that's an enormous impact on the type of organisation you're going to be.
Can you in some way relate, you know, the customer may be internal, or let's think about it simply and think about the external customer at the end of the line with your call team. Can you connect me in the back office working on IT with what happened out there today? Sure.
Yes, so we do a huge amount of communication work around, you know, bring alive, and so every single individual in the organisation can see the role that they play individually in delivering a great customer experience, and the kind of language we use. Kind of a couple of really simple examples of that, and actually I'll give one because every one of our employees at the management level have a cascade objective. We only incentivise three things: cash, growth and NPS. And for the NPS one, it's a cascade objective where every person in our organisation at management level needs to sit down with their line manager today and saying, what are we personally going to do to improve the customer experience in 2013?
Yeah, similar to that, we do have Net Promoter Score as our key metric for customer experience as part of our 8 targets for our company bonus. So it's everyone's got buy-in, everyone's got a part to play in improving that score.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because we know the mechanics in any office environment can other things supersede the politics of the office, who the manager really likes that day, and so on and so forth. But does it cut through if you get direct feedback and then congratulations from the person that you've actually served ultimately? Yes, that could be internal, but externally, again, for the simple example. Peter, what do you think?
Absolutely. I think it's really important to share the good news, not just with the individual concerned that provided that great service, but with their team, outside the team, with the rest of the organisation, for really big examples, and give people that positive reinforcement that doing a great job for our customer is what we expect you to do when you pitch up every day.
It's great, wholesome and healthy carrot. What about
Absolutely.
accountability slightly on the stick side? You know, you have to also use that information to make sure that everyone's doing their job and helping.
Absolutely, reward and recognition is more important than the kind of stick. But actually, just people come to do a great job. And you know, the example there, we actually also launched an internal shout program. So even though Peter might actually be an internal guy, if he's helped me deliver a great experience for somebody, then actually I can shout him, and that verbatim is also published on his own profile page. So yes, I do understand that, you know, the kind of the benchmarking where you are, etc., as a stick is important, but by far the most important part of any customer experience program is the cultural bit, and the important part there is reward and recognition.
And actually, I suppose if you're taking a more positive approach rather than using all stick, as you were saying earlier on, Sean, then the effect is the same. You still have that. It's just a slightly more positive stance in daily working. Culture, how important is that?
Well, it's that chicken and egg thing, isn't it? You know, why is it that really high-performing organisations have really happy people in them? Is it because they're high-performing, they're happy, or is it because they're happy, they're high-performing? And you've got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And if you've got unhappy staff, then probably that's a good place to start.
Yeah.
I think it is a balance of not just living in a fluffy pink world where you only ever look at the positive messages. That's obviously really important, and we do focus heavily, much more on the positive messages in terms of getting them out around the business, putting them up on screens, etc., etc.
And so you've seen that impact on what your ultimate consumers, your customers, are getting, because they're getting a friendlier, happier treatment, if you like. And more practical as well, obviously.
Yes, yeah, but I think the important thing to remember here is when there are negative scores, when there are problems with processes, what we do at Affinity is we work together with process owners, we work together with team leaders and our coaching staff, and it's all about how can we actually improve. It's not, bash people over the head for performance. No. It's all about continual improvement.
Yeah.
And we have targets for every single process, and looking at root causes derived from what the customers are telling us. So we know internally the challenges that we have, but that comment from the customer, that's all powerful.
Just one brief point. I mean, it's another very large point. We can have an entire webinar on this, but customer service and IT. Now, obviously, there is using data, using the IT systems, the interface. Just very briefly, how interconnected are they? How important is it to have your systems working correctly so that the customer service can really be effective? Peter?
So I think there's two threads to that discussion. The first one being that your systems have to make it easy for your frontline staff to provide great customer service. They have to be there when you want them to be and deliver the information and do the things you want them to do. Yeah. The other thread is that if you want to be providing a delighting service to your customer, and in the service industry, for me, that's all about personalisation. You have to have the data where you need it and the information about that customer when you pick up the phone.
And
when
for it to be really good quality, up
Absolutely.
to date, right, and so on. So you're not keep on harassing the same customers.
Absolutely.
As well.
We don't want to be selling ISAs to everybody who walks into the branch when they've come in 3 times that week, for example.
No, absolutely. Listen, we must go back to the audience because you've sent in your thoughts on our poll. Thanks very much for writing those in. The question was, what's the biggest challenge when designing customer experience strategy? And the options were getting buy-in, which is what we've just been talking about, the size of your customer base and the challenges that brings, justifying return on investment, and choosing the right tools and technologies. Now, you say that getting buy-in, that we've just been talking about, is narrowly the most important thing. 36%, just over a third of you think that that is really, really important, which is quite encouraging, actually, isn't it? Second most popular option from you was choosing the right tools and technologies. Now, we just mentioned IT, but actually that does feed in, I suppose. Number 3 was justifying ROI. That was 27%, so they're all around the third mark. And understandably, again, this is the perspective that some of your leaders may come with, because money counts. Size of customer base was 3%, so that wasn't so important. So look, what do you think about that? First of all, getting buy-in. We just covered it. I think people are on the same page, are they?
Yeah, and to every conference you go to, it will be the number one, and simply it's these programs need to be led by the senior board. Every single program that I've come across that's not led by the CEO fails.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
You need the launch and also
Absolutely.
the motivation to continue it on, otherwise it's gone.
It's not just something small that gets put on the end customer service. It does have, it's a real cliche, but it has to run through a whole organisation, and if it's being led by somebody on the board, then that should come. Yeah.
And before we move on, Sean, what do you think about?
Well, I think it's interesting. There's an individual perspective, what you do personally, there's what your organisation does, but I think there's also what we do as a collective. I find when you go to conferences and exhibitions around the whole area of customer experience, the people you talk to are excited and enjoy the work that they're doing because they're dealing with customers and they're changing the demands of customers. And actually, I think sometimes we flock to these types of things because actually it's a happy place for us as well. It's somewhere that we can get to because we aren't dealing with that day-to-day pressure of, well, where's the business case, where's where do we get the buy-in? How can you demonstrate that it's actually working? But taking the feedback from all this and then presenting it back, it builds a better community, and actually at the end of the day, hopefully happier customers. So
let's hope so. Well, let's move on. We talked about the strategies, the customer interaction and the organisational buy-in that can enhance the experience of every person looking to buy your services. But the many advances in technology are obviously shifting customers' priorities and changing their behaviour all the time. For example, UK consumers have shown a voracious appetite for transacting online with the development of better broadband. Over 40% of adults, in fact, now own a smartphone, and with the number of tablets in the UK households expected to double this year, the way that customers buy products and choose services will continue to evolve, obviously. So how should organisations respond to that and adapt their strategies accordingly? Let's just start with Sean. Mobile. Yes, mobile is. It covers a whole range of areas.
Absolutely. There's the phone, there's the tablet. There's your laptop. It's still a mobile device.
Should that be your big priority, do you think?
No. So I think the mobile is just a massively disruptive technology, because as soon as people have got the ability to do stuff wherever they are, then the workflows condense dramatically. So it creates an expectation, again, go back to that word of immediate interaction. And how many times have you sent an email and you're disappointed you haven't got a response back in 10 minutes? People have got lives, they've got other stuff to do. And so the whole thing is incredibly disruptive. And if you haven't got a strategy for dealing with that disruptive nature, then you're going to struggle. But I think
mobile is only part of your strategy, right? Because it's the interaction point.
Absolutely. And I think the point I'd say is you need a strategy for customer interaction, and whatever channel you add onto it, whether it's social or mobile, and it's your tablet or your smartphone, or actually not forgetting about it. I'm always amazed when you say 40% of people have got a smartphone. But actually, I bet if you ask in the community of people here, probably 99% of people have got a smartphone. There's still the surprise to a lot of people is that how many haven't got one yet. And I think that will move forward. You've got to support those guys, and they've got to be part of your strategy as well.
So smartphones are one thing. Obviously, we've seen the surge in use of tablets and bigger screen, quite useful. Yeah,
I mean, what we're finding is actually we're getting more transactions on our website through tablets than mobile. And I think it's just a case of understanding what are your customers going to be using your website for. And for us, 50% of our contact now come through online channels, which is a massive move away for a traditional water company. So I think the family on the sofa watching EastEnders, paying the water bill or submitting the meter reading, that's how we're envisaging our customers using online technologies.
Or Coronation Street or Emmerdale.
Yes. Other soaps are available.
But is it as simple as, I don't want to boot up my computer right now, I'd rather just open up the tablet and work with that? What is it?
I think it's looking at what the customer is looking for when they're using a particular device. So our mobile banking app, for example, has actually a very limited functionality set. We've only put on there the things that you need to do when you're out and about town or you're sitting on the train. And the expectation that customers don't want a full suite of banking functions in a public place.
Again, it's practicality, isn't it? Ease of use, practicality.
Yeah, and so for us, mobile's fantastic, because it means that we're a mobile provider, and people can actually stay connected even if they're on the London Underground. And I think the point you made there about one of the key applications we have on our mobile phone is My VM, which is particularly account information. So it's been that really relevant to that touch point. I think again, from a customer experience perspective, a really interesting space around mobile is the conversations you can then also get involved in. So when we talk about advocacy, and particularly switching on word of mouth, when you look at how are people kind of doing that, they tend to be doing that on the road, when they're mobile, social, Twitter, etc. So there's a whole discipline there about getting involved in those conversations.
And again, one thing I've certainly noticed is that use of social media has actually brought it to an older time. Using technology has allowed us to have that personal interaction to a certain level. So social media is obviously very important. To be involved in social media, or at least to listen. If you don't, you're missing out on half the conversation, isn't that right? How do you kind of try to encapsulate that? And are you dealing with people on social media? Are you starting to use these multi-channel approaches?
Yep. We've got a Twitter account and Facebook, and we use Twitter more for customer interactions rather than a PR platform. we
it's
use
a Q&A platform.
Yeah, yeah, and so we have some people that work on Twitter who have got a background in customer relations. So they have been in the call centre at some point, they understand the systems, they understand our business.
Yeah.
So as soon as they detect any potential, you know, negative tweets, they can jump on those straight away. And we actually use that as part of our commendations internally.
Yeah.
We'll find that customers tweet back to say, wow, didn't expect that from a water company. Came back to me, you know, within 10 minutes of
Personal
me
interaction.
complaining about a burst.
Yeah.
So it's a real opportunity. It might be daunting to a lot of businesses, but the opportunities are fantastic.
Sean, how important do you think social media and the other platforms and the use of technology, how do you think that will influence strategy, be important to us? We're all consumers here. How important do you think it will be in the future?
So, well, it's just going to be the way we work, the way we do stuff. I mean, I think it was interesting you said about being in the underground. You know, so the time when people are doing a lot of this is when they're travelling. You know, between things, they've got a bit of downtime. You know, it doesn't happen on my line back out of King's Cross because I keep going through tunnels. But so get that in there in the tunnels, and we'll have even more going. You know, there is so much information out there that we can use, and it's actually responding effectively is what customers are demanding.
However you do it.
And now you're doing that, you'll never be able to not do that. That's now their expectation.
Yeah, now now the expectations are at that level,
But
you have to match
that's
it.
not a problem, because as long as you have your strategy planned where you're going to look to migrate traffic from your contact centre through to social media or other online channels, customers are, you know, thinking with their feet. They're showing us by volume how they want to interact with us.
And I think you made a really interesting point about what you do on the inside. I think the really interesting trend also is how organisations are starting to adopt internally some of those technologies. And actually, you can never really make the most of social with customers unless you understand it. Most people actually running organisations aren't particularly great around social media and probably a bit grey-haired and a bit old. So actually, for organisations to be successful in the social space, they actually start to need to adopt it internally first.
And certainly we had to leave our mobiles outside today, which is a technical issue rather than us. We didn't want to tweet. We did want to tweet, didn't we? Okay, well, listen, that's been fantastic. We had a great discussion so far today, and I hope you've been inspired by some of the insights from our cross-industry panel. Many of you will be based in different locations around the world, so we want to give you the chance to share your comments and experiences with us now as we spend the last 15 minutes answering your questions. Now, we've been asking you to get in touch both on the webpage and also on Twitter using the hashtag CustXP. We weren't there, unfortunately, but people were. So let's get some of the answers to your burning questions from our panel right now. Let's start with one to my screen straight here. The question is, it's one for us. What is your own best customer experience with a bank? That's from Barnes Peak, Senior Manager Securities at ING Bank. Peter, no choice.
So this is not with my bank. It's another bank I used to bank with, and actually it comes from the back of a complaint. So I was going on holiday with a group of friends, and I did a massive travel money order for about 8 of us. So it was a rather large amount of money, and they sent it to me twice and debited my account for it twice. The second lot arrived as I was walking out the front door to go to the airport. So I was frantically onto the bank on the phone, in the taxi to the airport, saying, I haven't got any money in my account now because it's all sitting here in cash. And the response was immediate and fantastic. It was, okay, Mr. Dean, sorry about that. We'll extend your overdraft immediately, interest-free, by the amount that we've sent you too much. When you get back, give us a ring and we'll arrange a courier to come and collect the extra money at no cost to you. And here's an extra, I think they gave me £100 to apologise as well. So it was, and because they fixed it immediately, I'm now much more of a fan of them than I was before.
I'll get just one more. Yes.
So 4 weeks ago, unfortunately, some bugger cloned my debit card.
Other words are available.
So, cloned my debit card. I didn't actually know about it, but Lloyds Bank actually rang me up, saying, Mr. Risebrow, we've seen some really peculiar behaviour on your credit card, and so we stopped it immediately. So that kind of proactive reaching out before I even know there was a problem. Superb communication throughout. Next steps, recredit immediately the kind of the money, and it was that whole piece around proactively spotting it, keeping me completely informed, and then the whole reassurance piece about kind of what was going on, what they were doing. They were terrific. I really was delighted with it.
And we certainly talked about how a negative experience or a negative comment can actually inspire you to improve. That's these are the parts where you can focus on something to improve. And certainly fraud, in my case as well, has been a great experience.
Yeah.
Just the knowing that you have backup. Let's go to my screen here. This is from Mariella. Morad mentioned that customer experience is one of the measures used by Ofwat. I'd like to ask how effective the regulator can be in promoting customer-centric improvements, or is it the only real way to ensure this genuine and vibrant competition between companies? So this could apply to many industries, but regulating, this can be a block sometimes.
It's a great question, actually.
Yeah.
Because without going into huge amounts of detail, we have to compete in something called the service incentive mechanism. Sounds like an implement of medieval torture, but it's basically where Ofwat will survey 200 of our customers every quarter, and that's done with all the other water companies as well. There are quantitative metrics, qualitative metrics, and that all goes into a league table. And what we've found is our Voice of the Customer programme enables us to actually predict where we're going to be in the league tables. But what you find is it's only about where you are against your peers. So the guys at the top of the table, they basically are allowed to charge customers more. The ones at the bottom have a financial penalty, and there's like a grey area in between. So there are incentives to get to the top.
Do you feel it's a bit limited just being within the industry? Because we're talking across industries here, and we've mentioned, everyone's mentioned here, it's quite interesting to take bits of best practice from other people. Would you like to have more influence from other industries, or be part of it?
I think it's down to the company to go out there and see what best practice is in other industries. As I said, with using NPS, we're able to benchmark outside of water. But the interesting thing is, with the service incentive mechanism, when you look at the league tables, there is very, very little difference in the positions between the companies, and it can mean the difference of 1 or 2 responses actually moves you up 5 places on the league table. So there is an awful lot of competition out there, and I don't think the general consumer is actually aware of the pressure that we are under by our regulator to provide that amazing service.
Let's go to a question sent in just before we came on air today. It's from Roger Stone, Marketing Manager, Association for International Broadcasting. Is the use of personas in developing customer experience journeys a good way to help us understand customers, or does it lead to stereotyping when we should be responding to each person individually? Personalisation, we've gone through the personalisation thing, haven't we? Yeah, it's interesting, Sean, yeah.
Yeah, so one of the, I've talked before, we're kind of 5 or 6 years into our journey. 3 or 4 years into any customer experience transformation, you need to get into service design. It's not just about, you don't fix your way to being great, you actually say this is the desired experience, and actually personas will help you do that. I mean, we actually co-create with our customers, so we got our customers in, our competitive customers in, our frontline staff, our directors, and they work together for weeks and weeks and weeks designing those experiences. But actually, if you can't bring real customers in to do that, and I would say do that as the first priority if you can, personas, getting people to actually say this is what a journey looks like from a customer's point of view is a really, really useful tool.
From Steria's point of view, what do you think, Sean?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I think there's a lot of focus in the customer journey mapping on the outcome that the customer achieves, but you then have to say, well, who is the customer? And lots of organisations don't segment their customer bases particularly well. They just say, well, we want everybody to be our customer. Yeah? And in some instances, you almost have everybody in a locality. But once you've started that segmentation, you say, so managing those journeys and delivering against those journeys, you've got to get the best commonalities. You've got to have a level of both effectiveness and managing the cost to some extent to how you're going to do that. And you can only do that by looking at collections of customer types, and personas really help you to get there. The biggest cost and the failure always comes from the exception processes, and they're the ones that you didn't try out all the way along the way.
You need to be flexible, you need to be able to listen along the way as well.
But personas aren't something I don't think you use at the coalface. When somebody's ringing up, you don't say, oh, you're customer of type X, therefore I respond in this way. So I think in the design process, absolutely you need them. In the delivery process, you're personal and you deliver.
Although funnily enough, in my broadcasting background, personas were used fundamentally for defining who you were talking to. It's interesting, but again, the industries will vary. Let's go to Peter for another question here. This, I don't have it's from Gordon Inglis. Sorry, Gordon. Thanks for writing in. How do you balance optimising the customer experience with vast cost reduction targets? where the two objectives are often directly opposed. Now, we had this question earlier on. Can you do it and still have ROI? Can you do it and not cut costs? What do you think, Peter?
I'd say, actually, what we've found in a lot of cases is that it's the inefficiencies and problems and failure demand which is generating the cost and also generating the poor experience. And so when you're designing your efficiency program, you absolutely have to do it with the customer in mind. And when you're designing your customer program, you need to think about efficiency of process as well as designing the best experience. Because at the end of the day, we're all in business to make some money and give value back to the shareholders. But I think the danger is taking them individually, having an efficiency program over here and a customer program over there. The ideal state is to have them combined. A one program that looks at both efficiency and the customer experience at once.
Because it flows again end to end.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, your processes, if your processes are improved internally, it's going to be easier for customers to have that experience. And if it's easy for customers, they're happy. So it definitely does go hand in glove.
Has this been the perfect fix? Because then, of course, the people working internally will also be happy because their lives are made easier.
And happy staff make happy customers.
Is this the answer? What do you think, Sean?
I mean, absolutely. It's about great employees connected to delighted customers, connected to great business results. So, I mean, and for those of you obviously know, Virgin, Richard Branson has got a really famous quote about looking after the staff and the rest comes. So 100%, that's why it's such an important cultural change.
I think going back to the point about what is it the customers are trying to achieve and then segmenting those customers. Often the really successful organisations, like you say, who's great at customer experience, and people will often say Apple. But Apple only do about 4 or 5 products. It's relatively simple. The guys from Apple will say, God, it's the most complicated thing in the world to make it simple. But actually, it's relatively simple, and they're not trying to do everything for everybody. They're saying, there's our customer base, these are the things we're providing, and we're going to make it the best we can possibly make it.
So, we're close to being out of time, but let's move on. NPS, right? We talk about NPS quite a lot. Does it work for customers who don't really contact you? I mean, how can you get past that? I've been recommended this next service too many times. Recalcitrance. How can you move past it and get people involved?
I think it does go back to looking at the social media space, because their customers are having that conversation almost without you.
Which is part of the reason they're having it there, I suppose. So when you
Yes.
barge into the conversation, it needs to be nice and friendly and relaxed, right?
Yes, it definitely does, and that's where you have to have a distinct different strategy for dealing with direct feedback as indirect. And so I always say it's like going into a coffee shop and overhearing the table next to you talking about how lovely their coffee was or how awful the barista was, as opposed to the barista himself saying, can you just, rate the coffee that I've just made you out of 10? The customer will respond differently. But as long as you're taking all of those things into consideration and understand why you may get slightly different ratings for different ways of asking, you'll have a good understanding.
So we're almost out of time. Sean, what would you say for a company that hasn't really thought about the customer as a connected part of the business, if you like, or it's been separated? What now? What can you do now, briefly?
Well, I think there's ways of looking at it. So if you want to start, you need to look at where your complaints are coming from. You need to look at the interactions that you're having with your customers on a day-to-day basis and absolutely listen to them. And you need to show that you're listening by actioning the things that you're doing. And you've got to have a level of rigour in what you're doing. It should be in a program. There should be somebody who's got some ownership. But at the end of the day, if you haven't got your own people engaged in it, then it's not going to work. So starting with the people is always going to be a great idea.
Internal, yes, listen, respond, but it starts with the people?
Well, everything, I mean, service is for people, by people, so 100%. So actually winning the hearts and minds of everybody within your organisation is the critical starting point.
So free donuts on Fridays, or more than that? Is it that feedback we talked about earlier on from the customer, understanding and actually congratulating members of your team when it works directly?
It's that direct feedback. It's also engaging your staff in the design and fixing the problem. They all see the problems every day talking to the customers. They know better what goes on than the people in the back office. engage them, ask them what they think,
Yeah.
and you'll have a bigger response.
Well, I hope you've enjoyed the last hour, whether you've been watching us live or on demand. Hopefully it's given you some useful insights to help you to shape your own customer experience strategy, whatever your industry and range of customers. As we've heard from the panel today, whatever the different dynamics within industries and between organisations, the challenges in achieving excellence in the customer experience are all too similar. And we'll be exploring these issues across different sectors at Marketforce conferences in the near future, including customer experience in rail on June the 25th, operations and technology in financial services on June the 27th, and the Energy Forum on October the 22nd. And you can find out more on our website, www.marketforce.eu.com. Many thanks to our panel today. They were fantastic for taking part, and to Steria for supporting today's webinar. And of course, thanks to you for watching and sending in your comments and your questions. Sorry we didn't have a chance to answer them all, always the way. But for now, we do hope you can join us at our next event. See you then. Take care. All the best.